gentlemen, and welcome to the Archer Report. I'm your host, Steel Archer, and we've got a really great episode coming up for you. It's Malak. She's back. It's great. We love Malak so much, and we really appreciate you for taking your time out to talk about space sustainability, space law, and all things like space related. So Malak, before we jump in, how are you? I hope you're doing well over there. Hope it's not too hot, too cold. I don't know what the weather's like. Hope you're well.
Hi, Steel. Thank you for having me again. Actually, this is the third time I'm back to your show. Before, it was the two previous ones were on Depth Nation, and today first time for me at the new show, and I congratulate you for that. It's amazing. I enjoyed so much the one you were talking about China, and it was really nice one. I loved that episode.
Oh well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, a lot of people said I should change the name of the show or get another show to reflect more about who I am and not just about, well, the financial issue that we've been complaining about on Detonation. It's here now. You've got all the unemployment that we've been talking about. COVID was the release mechanism. We were looking, we were saying, what's going to do it? What's going to do it? What's going to pop the bubble? But so we found that now. We know what's going to happen, and so it's all in motion. But thank you very much. Yes, the China one is very interesting. China is a very big, dynamic player in our global community, and it's got to be something that we're going to have to talk about going into the future to know, and especially on the space front. And this is why you're here, Malak, because space is incredibly complicated. I mean, it's a big scientific endeavor. It's arguably the final frontier. I think it will be the final frontier. Our minds are a big frontier, and also we still got to go under the ocean. So there's at least 3 left. But space is very big, and I think it'll carry us on for a long time, and we need to know. And we need to have rules. We need to have rules. We need to have agreements. We need to have legislation. We need to have state actors that abide by collective norms in space, and that's why you're here to help us navigate through the complexities of some of the legislative problems. But yes, thank you very much for that, and thank you for coming on. We had a really good time talking about satellites and how they stopped human trafficking. That was a really fun episode. I really enjoyed that. But you wanted to introduce yourself for the news show. So who are you, Malak? You're a good friend of mine, but who are you so that other people will know?
What I say all the time, before I used to say, before I get into the space dominion, what I say, I'm a global citizen trying to make change. And now I say I'm a cosmic citizen, earthling, trying to make a change, trying to raise awareness about space, the risks that can happen over there. Also, the implication of space and space exploration on Earth, on Earth sustainability, and the need to have codes of conduct and to have norms, ethics in this endeavor, and not to repeat the same problems and issues that we created and the havoc we created on Earth. I start by introducing myself. First of all, I am a legal practitioner. That's my first, let's say, introduction about myself. I got into space, let's say, by not by chance, but space is always. I was fascinating about space, and I grew up watching the famous, and I put a comment today on Facebook, the famous Stargate. If you remember that the series, and it was in the culture when I grew up. So I am a senior legal advisor specialized in international business law, international space law and policies, expert in international relations, diplomacy, and international law, public law, let's say. Also, but right now I practice more business law and space law. A partner in a law firm in UAE, international commercial arbitrator and adjudicator. What people, they ask, what is adjudicator? And I say it's private judge. Based on commercial arbitration and so on. Also, proud to say I'm champion of tolerance under the UAE Ministry of Tolerance, human rights advocate who's combating human trafficking, raising awareness also about women's equality, gender equality, women's rights, and women exploitation and abuse. Also, the founder of the advocacy, which is why I'm here today, Sustainable Space for Humanity, multiplanetary human species advocate also, transhumanist and a member of the US Transhumanist Party. I advise various NGOs and I promote SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals.
Wow, that's a huge list, and so we really appreciate your time coming on the Arch Report and helping us through some of this. And we're very familiar with some of the people that you talked about there. The Transhumanist Party, obviously. TAFS is another one, great one. But, you know, also well done for advocating for all the different rights groups as well. These are important things, and yeah, absolutely, it's fantastic. Well, on the space sustainability idea, let's move forward onto that. And, you know, it's interesting, Malak, you know, in the old, you know, before the Wright brothers built the aircraft, no one would have ever thought that aircraft would have, like, getting international norms on aircraft would have been a problem. But we actually managed as a globe to work out this problem. People jump into an aircraft, they get into a plane, and they go over different private territory, international territory. You know, we know all the different airspaces, whether they're military or this or that. And we actually worked out a system as an international community, and we worked it out, and we now have aircraft that go seamlessly. Pre-COVID, it was very obvious, but, you know, with COVID, it restricts travel and stuff. But we worked this out as an international community. Now, the other thing we did in terms of transport, I mean, the same thing we've done with cars, you know, with borders and things. But the big one is also ships. We worked out how to build an international shipping lane where people went and traded goods and services all across the world. Where does the space story happen? Where does the space story start in terms of space sustainability concept and working through various treaties to try? You've seen the seeds trying to germinate into some sort of coordinated space normality. There's various definitional arguments. Where does space start? I mean, that's a big argument, right? Where does it even start? What is it started in the lower Earth atmosphere, in the stratosphere, as high as aircraft fly? Above that, the ionosphere, where does it start? So there's so many different things. So where do we start when we start on this conversation, Malak? Where would you say we have to start? Where do we start?
You talked about so many different issues right there. You talked about the way how the air. Let's say I will address this from a law perspective. You talked about, for example, how the air law emerged and how it became now the norm, and it's very clear, and we have the bodies governing air. Like aeronautic activities and so on. But the problem remain the issue with the space, the space field. And there is a big issue that you talked about right now is the delimitation issue between the air space and the outer space. And this problem is still persistent until now. However, I will come back to it later on when I start talking about the issues and the voids pertaining the space treaties and the space law in general with international space law. But I would like to start talking about the PhD actually my sustainable space advocacy started when I started my PhD journey, which is not long ago anyway, because some people, they ask me, when are you finishing? I'm like, I'm stumbling right there to work on shaping my research. But it all started there. I have worked on doctrinal analysis addressing space commercial activity and the new space ecosystem from sustainable development perspective. in light of the current international space law framework. So it started all at that moment when I started like multidisciplinary approach to my research, and you know, a list or a big list of voids is there. And I found out that the sustainable development or the long-term sustainability of space is stumbling. It's not like on a legal strong legal ground. So when I go back to this point right there, it's a multidisciplinary approach. Like I said, it's again different disciplines because sustainable development it's a huge already topic. It's multidimensional. A lot of disciplines are interrelated together. A lot of interests that are at stake that needed to be balanced. The whole sustainable development is balancing the interest, which is the environmental sphere, with the economic sphere, with the human or let's say social sphere, institutional sphere also. So all of them, they're not each one is a discipline on its own, and getting all this on the light of commercial space activities and the way new space is going, it's a huge topic to address. And with the stagnant international space law, it gets a little bit difficult. And there I have seen a lot of issues that I would like to go through one by one, or maybe the main, because it's very, very difficult to go through in 1 hour. But I would start first of all by a little bit shedding light on some definitions, because the issue that people until now, they don't know what is new space, what is space law, and what is space economy. And it's very important to start from there, to go then to sustainable development and the issues that going on with the new space. So the new space, I would say, refers to the recent commercialization of the space sector, with all its aspects and implication, new trends and activities. If we go back to a new space ecosystem, it encountered new trends of private funding into the new space, which is comprised of different firms undertaking different activities. You have space access, you have firms specialized in payload launch into space, including cargo and human. The remote sensing firms, satellite data and analytics firms, habitats and space stations firms, low Earth orbit tourism, and beyond low Earth orbit firms and research and investment firms. So all these kind of firms or activities that they go under a new space. A new space phenomenon is something been shaping since some time now. It started from I went through the academic research, how NASA, through NASA experience, and how it's privatized, and through making private companies and private firms entering into the space sector in the United States. And it started by getting public contracts. They called for private actors to undertake public contracts, and that's how it happened, because of the issues that happened with Challenger and the space programs at that time with the United States, that they seized the funding and they wanted to give it away to private. Then I would say that the new space gave rise to a new ecosystem related to space, because the space exploration has entered into a new era due to unprecedented qualitative shift, paradigm shift induced by technological, political, and economic space trends. So it's all started with that shift. I can explain more. It happened first with the reduction of economic barriers that a private actor could access into the space sector within one nation or within this, like the international space or the global space economy. So the other one is facilitating the accessibility of off-the-shelf technology to space firms, which they are not, let's say, SpaceX or the other, space giants. So new space actors, private actors, could access easily because they don't have to go through the whole issue of making their own technology from scratch. And of course, technology needs funding and so on. So what they do, they use the off-the-shelf space technologies, and especially to developing countries. And some countries, they were not in the scene in the space race. So let's say I give an example. For example, new space new space entrance nations. India. It's the way how they got into the space, the global space sector. It's amazing, and they are making a big progress of that. So the second aspect that we see with the new space and the rise of new ecosystems is the race to commercialize space among nations, which is stimulated by competitive national space policies, because each nation now is making a competition to get the access of the private actor easier. And like that, the space actor, the private space actor, makes forum shopping. So what they do is, like, forum means like the place where or the jurisdiction given the best legal climate or environment to the actor in order to thrive. The other one is also the facilities that they are getting from private investment schemes, which we did not see it before. And it's one of the biggest catalysts for new space entrants and private actors, that they don't have billionaire money like what we are seeing with the billionaires that they are investing into space. So venture capitalists and so on, they are investing because of first of all, the competition into the space industry is lesser than the other industries. And also the way how governments, they are facilitating the access without a lot of economic and legal barriers.
Yeah, so Malak, so in preparation for this talk, I dug my teeth into some very old treaties. I was going through United Nations treaties and treaties between the Soviet Union and the United States. And what I found is a pattern of growing complexity and diminishing barrier to entry. So actually very early in the piece, in the 50s, after the satellite era, the Sputnik went up. If you go forward from there, you see nation states who are very dominant in space because there's not many competitors. There's only the United States, the Soviet Union, and maybe the United Kingdom, not even really. You have very small amount of actors and national actors, and it's very easy to make a sustainable space policy. And I think that's why in the mid 20th century, you saw a very big advancement in this legislative arena. And a cohesive nature towards advancing a sustainable space. It was just a few big actors who all agreed on all of the terms, and everybody else couldn't even compete in the arena anyway. So everyone just signed up to the United Nations conventions and said, okay, we'll follow the rules. Because if you're a developing nation, or if you were a smaller nation like India or China or Israel, or someone who's about to become, or the EU, someone who was about to become a larger player in this period of time, you were better off signing up to sustainable legislation. Incorporating that in, because actually that means if you ever did make it into space, you would have the United States or the USSR or these larger space actors on your side, actually giving you technical support, data support, support from engineers, support from the different. We'll just get it back. We'll use that to jump to an ad.
Life. We have goals that depend on bodies and brains. We work and learn better. We love better when our bodies and our brains function better. At Thrivous, our goal is to help you improve your brain and body, to help you achieve your goals. So that's the power we encapsulate. Ready for help with your goals? Visit Thrivous.com.
All right, Malak, you back?
Yes, I'm back. I'm sorry about that because sometimes it happens. Skype normally it's not great in here where I am.
That's all right. Well, like I was saying, so it was better if you were a smaller nation to sign up to the sustainability aspect of the treaties through the United Nations and stuff. And what I've seen and what you're talking about commercial law and the increasing complexity of the various actors. You've got larger states, which is what I want to find out from you: China, the United States, maybe the European Union, some arguably India, Israel. These ones don't want to adhere to some of the aspects of sustainable development because it doesn't work in their favor, because they feel it's limiting. But you've got a lot of other actors who are very happy to still bandwagon on this, on these principles. Is that what you see, that there's more actors and there's more complexity, and that's why that this is more of a challenge, including more actors being part of what you're talking about here in the commercial space arena, which is absolutely exploding?
I think I need to start from the beginning again. Law people, we need to go from the principle and the definitions, and we explain later on, because it's very, very important for the audience to understand what is it about and what is what is space sustainability. Yeah. From the first, we start from there. Then we will talk about the principles under the international law and how it is, because how it is seen in light of the commercial space activities, and in light of the issues that's going on with the counter capabilities and the new race is happening right now between the United States and China, because before the race was before it was between the former Soviet Union and United States. And we see now how China is advancing and what they are doing, and most of the time what they are doing into within the space race, it's most likely can be against all the norms, and that happened with few incidents that happened before. I wanted to explain.
So what is the concept? What is the space sustainability? What is the sustainable concept then?
Okay, I will start with the concept of space sustainability. We have two different concepts now, because it should be cleared out. The first one is the sustainable development concept, which is the basis of sustainability concept. A sustainable development concept, it's the base of the space sustainability concept that I am advocating. But there is, if we go back to the long-term sustainability guidelines that it was agreed upon or adopted by the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, which we call it COPIUS, the United Nations COPIUS, on 21st of June 2019, it's saying that the long-term sustainability is the ability to maintain the conduct of space activities indefinitely into the future in a manner that realizes the objectives of equitable access to the benefits of the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes in order to meet the needs of the present generation while preserving the outer space environment for future generations.
All right.
So this is the definition.
Let's break that down. Let's go over that very slowly because there's a lot packed into that sentence there. So, the ability to maintain the conduct of space activities indefinitely. So this is an article. This is an idea that once we're out there, it's unbreakable. It's unshakable. This is something that we need to perpetuate continuously, not just throughout our own solar system, but beyond our solar system into the universe at large. This is an unbreakable thread of a concept that needs to be perpetually taken into the future. It says here.
Can I stop you there, please?
Sure.
Can I stop you there? Yes. So this one is not seen like it's not interpreted the same way that you just said. Actually, is maintaining the conduct of space activities indefinitely. It means into the future in a manner that realizes the objectives of equitable access. And here we are talking about the present generation and the future generation, that we do not exhaust the space resources or the use of space exploration at the moment for us, and to keep it to the indefinitely. It means like forever. Like it's not. Yes, exactly. That's the thing. Actually, I will help you and help the audience with one question. This question will rephrase all what is there in the definition, and I will go through a further explanation. So the question that definition answers is how to ensure the continuity of space, the continuity of peaceful purposes use of space, okay? Because the peaceful purpose is very, very, very important. To conduct it in a peaceful way, because space is international for us by nature. It's open dominion for everyone, for every nation, that we could exploit and use and for the present generation and future generation without making any harm, without bringing our indifferences and our wars and our what we are seeing now and what we have seen since Homo sapiens started, moving around and becoming in different community. Well, within there, it's the same community, hostile and trying to have the power, who's going to rule and how it's going to happen. So it's saying how to ensure the continuity of the peaceful purposes use of space while ensuring the social and economic development to meet the needs of the present generation without jeopardizing the outer space environment for future generations for space exploration. So really, this is the main question that definition answer, and it can go, each within the question there's sub questions and need to be answered based on the principles of sustainable development. That's what I worked on through my academic researches. And I will, if you tell me why space sustainability is very important, can you answer me that? Why space sustainability? Based on that, why is it important? So now I'm asking you.
Well, why is space sustainability important in the context of that? I mean, because it sets up the framework for perpetuating humanity on for as long as we can. We face larger problems than each other. We potentially face extraterrestrial life. We also face the eventual death of our own sun and our own solar system, and the eventual death of our own universe. So we actually, as a species, face far greater issues and troubles than we do against each other. So we need to ensure that however we use and utilize the celestial objects in space, including the planets, including whatever we build, that we don't somehow fracture and jeopardize our own expansion into space. We don't exhaust the resources now, because like it's a reverse of what I think what they're trying to say is we have to reverse the story of what we've done on Earth. As we've moved about on the Earth, we've seen the Earth, because we didn't have a concept of the globe. The Greeks kind of did, but for the most part, the average person didn't have a concept of the globe and the finite nature of the Earth. So as we expanded over the Earth, we consumed the resources in an inefficient way. We didn't manage them for our posterity, for the future of our own existence as a species on our own planet. And the thing is with space is very big, but it's also very small in some respects. There is only a finite amount of matter and mass that's not in the sun. I mean, there's only a finite amount of asteroids, there's only a finite amount of planets, there's only a finite amount of hydrocarbons and water, etc. So these actually have, although it seems large to us as a small species here on this planet, these resources aren't that large, and we do know that humans can populate and baying all the other things, we could become quite an enormous species with trillions of beings out there. And if we don't manage those resources correctly, we could end up just facing a similar problem that we had here on Earth, where we reach the limits of our own doomed expansion. We don't want to expand fighting over pockets of resources in outer space like you see in some parts of the world now, or like you've seen throughout history. No, outer space isn't an unlimited resource that we can just abuse and we can't abuse. And I think that's what they're trying to say.
Like if I have my own idea about my own thoughts about why space sustainability is very, very important. But going back to just what you said, it's very true, because the issue with the space resources, people think that they will never get exhausted. Well, it's not true, because if they started mining celestial bodies, okay, what's going to happen to the long run? What's going to happen? So it will be exhausted also. The way how the environment also was treated on our Earth, we don't want it to be the same thing. Now, space resources, it's not only celestial body mining, also even the slots for placing the satellite. It can be exhausted. You know why? Because of the space debris that is going on over there. So with the crowding the space with the orbiting space junk, it's very, very alarming for the long run. Can you imagine that?
And in some of these treaties that I was reading, they weren't really concerned about when the Apollo mission, it would break up the constituent parts of the rocket and stuff like that. These weren't concerns, but as you develop later through these treaties, like I was reading today, they become very, very paranoid about the growing debris, the growing space debris. They can't clean it up. They become worried about the fact that we might get trapped here on Earth by debris, by satellites and other things, so that we become trapped on a prison planet. This is a legitimate issue, and this is a legitimate problem. And we need guidance on how to mitigate this issue. We really do.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. But I would say my thoughts about why space sustainability is very important. I can briefly state like a few of them.
Yeah.
Of course, space is important in a way that the world is is witnessing legal challenges facing the new space activity with the conflicting geopolitical space race. So we need to implement guidelines and work by these guidelines and codes of conduct, because it's very, very important that we do not start, like I say, taking the havoc that we have here with the same mindset and mentality up there into space. So it's very important, and I talked about the guidelines right there earlier when I defined the space sustainability, but of course they are only guidelines, and I would like for the audience to understand or to have an idea that the guidelines are soft law in international law. They do not have binding effects. So nations and also private actors are not, let's say, obliged, and they don't have any legal, international legal, liabilities if they do not apply it. So that is the first problem, why it is very, very important, and why I address it, and why I talk about space sustainability. The second thing why space sustainability is very important is the entry of new space actors to the space race. So the private actors. The space treaties do not address directly the private actors. They only address the countries, the states, what we say states in international public law. So in that matter, private actors, if the states that they are govern the private actors' space activities, allow them to do whatever based on the national law, national space law, they can create also issues, and we can have a multinational corporation that we've seen them in Africa during the colonization with unethical conduct and an unethical issue, but in different ways in outer space. And we don't want to have that also, because it will be against the long-term sustainability and against our children's futures, our next generations. Also, there's another, now we talk about the positive aspects of space sustainability, because of what space can do for our Earth, because space technologies, space exploration, and so on, what space can have on Earth. Space can help into the implementation or into advancing the sustainable development goals on Earth. It's very, very important. Satellite technologies are helping in the management of security here, food, management of, let's say, when I talk about food, agriculture, and so on, agriculture and so on, using the space applications to get a better agriculture sectors into, the nations that they are using. And the private actors, they are very attracted the use of space applications to catalyze the other sectors, which we call them the parallel sectors, the space sectors. Transportations also, the Internet of Things, all these kind of technologies that are, space technology are helping Earth development, social development, economic development, and environmental development, because also the monitoring of environment through space technology is crucial for us. The other point which I will point to why it is space sustainability very, very important, because actually in order to prevent our extinction, we are shooting for another endeavor, which is evolving beyond the Earth boundaries, to go and live into outer space. And this is why I'm advocating also multiplanetary species evolution. A lot of people, they are skeptical about it, and I see how when I advocate this particular point, they bring out all the issues that we have right now within our mindset, within our way of managing our resources here, the way how we treating each other, and so on. And yes, I agree. We don't want to export that into outer space and start a settlement over there and become, the next, let's say, human catastrophe to see it and watch it from here if we are still alive. But I don't know if I will be still alive when humans make their first settlement in Mars. And that's why I like I say, I always say I embrace future, but at the end of the day, I see the risks and I help in preventing the risk to happen. That's why space sustainability is very important, and all what I do is interrelated to each other. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So these private actors that aren't tied to these international laws, is that a failing in the law when it was first initially set up? Because as I saw it, there was laws and treaties that involved private actors, but these were usually components and arms of the state to submit documents, laws, data, to do things on behalf of the state to make sure that the treaties were standing strong. Why did the private actors go under the radar of these treaties? Why is this even a thing?
Actually, what I said about the private actors and the space treaties, what I talked about that the treaties were not addressed to private actors, because when we have international treaty, okay, the international treaties, it could be the scope of application of this treaty has to whom it can apply. Okay, this one is applicable to states only. That's the treaty. That's how it was enacted. Some of the treaties they address activities of private actors. Some of them, and I will go through that. I will go through that. But mainly, it did not address the activities that they are making right now, because the technology that we have today, it did not, it was feasible or not, but this is the way how they've done it when they finalized the space treaties. But I wouldn't say they go under the radar, because what they do right now, they are governed by the national laws. So now we have the international space treaties, which is formed by the 5 treaties enacted by United Nations. So we have they were enacted based on one very important principle. It is like a set of principles under the Declaration of the Legal Principles governing the activities of states in the exploration and use of outer space, which was the foundation of the Treaty on Principle governing the activities of states in the exploration and use of outer space, which we call it the OST, the Outer Space Treaty. And we call it also the Space Magna Carta, because actually it's the base of all the principles that all other treaties, all other laws and soft laws and so on are based on those principles. So the main one was the OST, that treaty. Yeah. Yes. So if I go back, and I will give you a little bit more explanation about the principle.
So
but you asked me
the way that you as a lawyer and someone looking at international relations from a law perspective, in international relations, we call this black box theory. We call this a black box. So the treaty is done between states through a third party like the United Nations, but they're not analyzed, their constituent parts, China, the United States, whatever, their constituent parts and their components are not analyzed. Their state, their Washington or Beijing or whatever state that currently represents that place is part of the treaty. And maybe that's why, maybe not under the radar, but that's maybe why there was this miscalculation from the beginning that that these private companies might not be a big player in this space arena, because obviously that they have become a very big part, and we do need principles to help steer these private companies, because it's let's just say arguably for a second that all the states adhere to the principles of space sustainability, or the OST, which we're about to go into, and I'll let you go into that in a second. But let's say they all adhere to making all the states in international law follow this soft law approach. They make safe as sustainable and safe and equitable to the law, but they could let their companies or their corporations get away with the parts outside of the law, right? And then that wouldn't be breaking the treaty.
There's a lot of games, can be, when the law is there, there's always void or gaps that can be used in a way to get away with the liability or with the international obligation.
Yeah, we have third-party states like North Korea, or or rogue states that they might be getting funding. Iran, they might be getting funding from other states that want to undermine the treaty or go around the treaty, and these private actors could. Let's go into the OST, because this is an interesting principles. The OST, the Outer Space Treaty. So, what's the constituent parts and core components of the OST?
Okay, I will take you one step back. Sorry, I've been taking you through a roller coaster since I started. I would like to say that international space law, it consists of all the space treaties, which there are 5 space treaties, the main space treaties, which we call them lex specialis of space. So because they are very, addressing space activities. And we have other treaties and other soft laws and other guidelines and so on. They could govern space activity. Depends on what is the activity and how it falls under these. And this is what we do, and this is what I do in international business law, is to go and find which scope goes under specific action or activities in order to apply that specific body of law or treaty and so on. Because in the treaty, we have the scope of application and to whom it's addressed. So we call rationi materiae and rationi personae. So we go from there and we try to check. Now, I go back to the space treaties, the lex specialis of space. There are 5. First of all, the international, the Outer Space Treaty, which was enacted which was the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Then we have the 1968 Rescue or Astronaut Agreement. We have the 1972, the Liability Convention, and the 4th is the 1975 Registration Convention, and the last one is 1979, the Moon Agreement. And more or less, some names of the treaties are you can find like the Moon Agreement has another name also, but to spare the time. So the Moon Agreement is the one we call it the failed treaty, because when we see the Outer Space Treaty, it has become and it's arguably said it has become part of customary law, because all actors, they are following us customs in international law, and it has almost all the world order, means like all the states in the world, more or less, I said. But the Moon Agreement, it's only ratified or accepted by few states, and probably 18 to 19 states, if I may. If I remember 18 or 19, something like that, because it changes. And why the Moon Agreement, we call it failed? Because it wasn't accepted by the main spacefaring countries, because it is the one that it prevents private actors from owning or right to property in outer space. So the Outer Space Treaty is the main treaty that laid down the main principles, and all other treaties and other laws and other governing bodies of, for example, the International Telecommunication Union and so on. They are they are governed by the main rules of Outer Space Treaty. And if we go to the principles of Outer Space Treaty, and that was your question, first of all, we have the main principle: the freedom of exploration and scientific investigation in outer space. So everyone has the freedom to do that. The second one is the non-appropriation principle and its consequences on space ventures. The non-appropriation, it's very, very important, because that created the issues with interpretation of the treaties. And this created the issue when United States enacted the national law allowing the private actors to own and to have right to property in outer space, and the mining issue and so on. The third one is the use of outer space must be exclusively for peaceful purposes, which is very, very important. And this is what we are having a problem right now between nations, because you see there is a problem of militarization and weaponization of space. And I have a dear friend. He opened my eye. Into an issue which is related to the quantum race right now between China and United States, and that quantum use is there is future issues that can be happening and raised because it would make issues in outer space and weaponization in outer space. This is very, very recent that I learned about it, and I'm researching about it, and I'm learning about quantum and the use of quantum and what can be happening in outer space using specific technology. I'm not going to say what is it, because I don't know if I'm allowed to say or not, because of the information I got. But I'm researching about it, and the interrelation between the quantum and this technology, I did not see it clear in academic researches. So that's why I will keep it, and I will go through and see if I can address it and talk about it another time. And the fourth principle, and I say main principle, states' duties in outer space governance under the Outer Space Treaty is very, very important. Space duties, obligations, and also responsibilities, and space rights also. It's laid down in the Outer Space Treaty. And later on, all these principles, they were, let's say, addressed maybe at each treaty, or they're grouped into the other treaties. For example, when I say state duties, there is the liability of states, which is in the Liability Convention. There is the registration of outer space objects. It's in the Registration Treaty. There is the governance of the registered objects that the space needs to follow based on the international norms and rules set by the OST. Then after that, it was taken and implemented in different international instruments. So these are the main principles.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. That's the Outer Space Treaty. Use of outer space must be exclusively for peaceful purposes, and that must be also must be a hard definition to define. I mean, what is a peaceful purpose? Because if you were a sneaky state, you might want to try and change that definition to suit your own needs, right? But I guess that's why the other components, for example, Article 1, freedom, exploration, and scientific investigation into outer space. So that wipes out a lot of the sneaky components that people might say you're being quote unquote aggressive. Quickly, a quick question for you. What is the law concerning private property in outer space? Can people claim private property? Can corporations, can governments? What is the definition or consequence of private property? Is there such a thing, or is it all common and collective?
Actually, under the space treaties, what we can say, space is the province of all mankind. The province of all mankind. It is like open field for everyone. So when we talk about ownership in that perspective, there is a problem. There is a contradiction by principle. So it is what is called res communis field, open access regime to everyone. So everyone could have the access and could use, but it's not saying if they could own. This one comes later. But what I wanted to say first of all, it laid down an open province for everyone. It's the res communis under the language of the law. It is based also on first come, first served. First come, first served. And there is an issue when we talk about satellite slots into the orbit, especially geostationary orbit, which is very important for placement of satellites. So first come, first served. What happened, and I observed, and I made the research. There's a big problem coming into the surface in some time. Some private actors, they registered the slot to place the satellites, but they do not place their satellites. And what they do, they just keep it to sell it probably, or give it. What they do is what we call it is a paper satellite. And it's a problem. This is one example of the situation right now with the first come, first served. When it comes to satellite placement.
So how do we prevent this problem of crowding out? I mean, if it's first come, first served, doesn't that mean all adherence to the OST and these other sustainability treaties? Doesn't that mean that some actors are going to get a leg up? If I'm a state, or if I'm a commercial space enterprise and I drag in an asteroid that's part of common humanity, does that mean everybody still owns it, but I still get all the money and the riches and the resources from that asteroid? Or if I'm a telecommunications satellite provider and my satellite burns up and now it's debris and it's inhibiting everyone, is it my problem? What is this? What's some of the issues that come up with this first come, first served common humanity problem? Is it apart from the ones you've outlaid? Because it's just a little confusing.
Okay, can I, because you asked me also a question about the non-appropriation issue, okay, and this is related to that one, because I answered I started by answering that space is the common heritage for all mankind, and exploration and all the use of space need to be done for all humanity. That was the main principle of the use of space. Then when we go to the non-appropriation principle, and it is related to Article 2 in the OST. Sorry, I'm moving away from the camera. I don't know why. Okay, so when we go to Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty, it made or imposed a restriction on Article 1, which gives the freedom to the use of space as a common heritage for all mankind. It prevented the national monopolization of space and celestial bodies. So it also prevented states from claiming their right of property by any means under international law. So including means of use, occupation, sovereign claim, considering that acquiring a property may be legally done under an international law through occupation, discovery, accession, and accretion. And this one, it clearly says in Article 2 that states cannot, means like the state cannot. Then under this article, it is explicitly prohibited, and it's clearly illustrated. It gives a room to deduct that there is an implicit authorization for private actors, because in international law, we could interpret it differently. When we talk about, when we give the prohibition to address to certain category or to certain rationi personi, we cannot deduct that the private actor is included. You understand?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah, so it gave room for interpretation, because they said it's claimed by sovereignty and it's addressed to states only. So that's what happened with the right of property, that commercial space activities and private actors right now, they have the right in 3 countries, in United States, in Luxembourg, and in UAE, to allow under their national law to own. And that one, it's not contradictory to the international law and space treaties, because there's a way of interpretation, and this issue was solved since I think 2015, when the states enacted the Obama Act, Space Act, and they allowing space private actors to own properties and to have the right of properties into space.
Right, absolutely, and I can kind of understand where they were going, you know, in the early days of these laws, in terms of, it was, if you've ever seen Star Trek, it's the Federation of Planets. It's kind of a universalist conception that we are humanity, we're all types of humanity, and that we're under this single unified government system, that all resources are commercial but common, and we wouldn't have arguments because we have a common law system that we worked out. That idea is being diversified along with national actors and private actors in this day and age, which is what we're struggling with. And so that's what comes in with these issues, because when you've got here, especially in regulating the use of orbital slots and radio frequencies. There's a lot of finite radio frequencies and things like that. And even in Australia, we're having issues exactly on this issue between a company called Foxtel and a company called SpaceX, right? And SpaceX is trying to use the same frequency to do the Starlink satellite system, the Starlink internet, as the Foxtel company uses to broadcast its TV network. And they're having big problems sharing. Now, if on a first come first served basis, Foxtel gets it, but the courts are saying, well, you have to share, and it makes it hard. And I understand that in a practical experience down here on Earth, in this way, it does make it hard, and it does make it harder with these finite resources such as a radio frequency or orbital slot. And, because you could have an orbital slot that's, this is the other thing. You could have a geography or an environmental or a Hubble telescope type enterprise or something. And, it might be taking up the room of a military or another state's scientific endeavor, and then you would get fights over those slots. I can see where this is causing issues and problems, and it's unfortunate that we're actually in this scenario. It's fortunate because it will breed progress, but there's definitely complications on this issue.
You are right, and this is the problem with the institutional governance of space activities, including the satellite slots and radio frequency allocation and the interference issues. Let me tell you also, and something I did not see that a lot of people talk about. I found that there is a discrepancy in the 5G frequencies from one state to another, and that problem creates an issue with the interference to normal satellites, to the other frequencies. Sorry, not normal satellites, to the other frequencies. And there's an issue with discrepancy from one state to another under their law. What is the frequency of the 5G? And it's a problem because it will create big issue later on. More satellites we launch, more issues is going to happen. Now, based on the international space treaties and the OST and the other, which is the registration convention and the liability convention, we have the other issue is related to the regulation and how we are not allocating, but the mechanism of allocation between, let's say, on the national scale and the international scale. There is a discrepancy in a way that, first of all, the satellite or any launched object needs to be registered in the registry under the UNUSA, United States body that specializes in that. And the problem, the registration is not done on time. Like, it's not timely done. There is a discrepancy between what we launch and what is in the registry. This is number one. Number two, there's because it's very important with the liability itself, we can check who owns that satellite, because the state who launched the satellite is responsible and liable for that satellite. There is an issue that is going on with the private actor, is a change of ownership while the satellite is up there. And this also creates issues, contractual issues, liability issues, international law issues. And so far, thank God, we don't see there are claims and let's say cases or international litigation involved in this. But the problem is going to happen with the crowded orbit that is going to be very soon, with all the states and private actors launching space objects out there. It's very, very important to address that one. And that one, it's included with the advocacy of space sustainability and the need to address these issues and these gaps and institutional problems that is going on and governance is going on right now. Taking also the, let's say, the other issue that I addressed regarding the satellites use is the light pollution. It's another issue that it's being addressed right now. It's not talked about so much, but astronomers are screaming help right now to say, please, we need guidelines on that. We need to get an ethical use of outer space and satellites in order to dim those light pollution, because we suffer on Earth already, and don't bring that problem worse over there with the satellite pollution and the lights is coming from satellites, to have a clear sky to go and discover. And also it's changing our ecosystem on Earth and our environmental, let's say, interaction within Earth also. So if I want to talk to you about space sustainability, I can go for days, and I can go through the non-appropriation principle in the Moon Treaty, Moon Agreement also, which is totally opposite, not opposite, which filled the gap and addressed the private actors. But what I said earlier, the Moon Treaty is not really embraced by all the countries. Only, let's say, 19 states are parties to that Moon Treaty, if I'm not mistaken. And it's not really applicable, knowing that the Moon Treaty addressed environmental issues. Not space debris issues, but environmental issues. So like I told you, I'm taking you a roller coaster today.
I like roller coasters. I always liked roller coasters, so that's okay. No, it's a really good talk, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm enjoying this a lot. You know, something I was just quickly thinking about. You know, one of the areas of international law that must have learned a lot in terms of managing people, which is the next big step. Malak, we've got, you know, essentially robots as satellites up there, but the International Space Station has been an experiment in international law, and the expansion of that law via intrapersonal communication and how national law and international law coalesce in a human relationship. Have you got anything to tell us about international law and its ability to affect the International Space Station and the behaviors of astronauts on the space station? And do any of these treaties that you've laid out here have an effect on that?
Okay, when we talk about space station, and the astronauts, they are on board of space stations. They are governed by intergovernmental agreement, which is not. It's different field than what I did not address and worked on, because space activities very huge issue. Like intellectual property, I did not get into it. What you call it, security and defense. So I did not get into it. Let's say the contract between the private actors and the governmental entities, for example, transportation between Elon Musk and the U.S. government and so on, is totally different than what is the intergovernmental agreements and the way how astronauts are governed. But vaguely, there is the intergovernmental agreement between the countries, parties to they are let's say partners in the space station. First of all. The second thing is the national law, okay, may be applicable of each state, may be applicable on their citizen or the person who went under their under their jurisdiction into the space station. Another thing is we've all faced the first crime happened from the International Space Station. You remember the issue with the lady, one of the ladies, she got into information. No, she was American, I think.
Oh, American. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I can check.
Yeah. And the problem is like okay, that problem is among two American citizens. You know, so the applicable law, the crime will be resolved under the U.S. law. Yeah, the problem will be there. Yes, the problem will be there when the crime happening between the different nationalities within the space station or any other, let's say, space object. So in that case, what's going to happen? Which law will be applicable? And there's a void right there, because we don't know, because we never had this issue before.
That's why this work that you're doing here is important, because the International Space Station, if you really think about it, is actually, it adheres to most of the principles of the Outer Space Treaty. It's there for science, investigation, exploration. It's the human. It seems like the human element is the complicated element in that respect, but for the most part, the ISS looks like it follows most of the principles laid out here in the space sustainability guidelines?
No, the space sustainability guideline is one thing. The Outer Space Treaty is another thing. Now, like I said, the Magna Carta of space is the Outer Space Treaty. And I told you that the international, all agreements, all international instruments, all national instruments should be, let's say, following the main principles laid down under the Outer Space Treaty.
That's what I'm saying.
And yes, because I heard guidelines. I don't know if I got you. I heard you right or not. Yeah, so the principles are the main principles that they lay down, let's say, the foundation of human activities in outer space. Everything else, all other instruments, all other national laws, and so on, they are based on that foundation. So if it is against the foundation or whatever, or the principles that they are laid down under the international space law, while the state is party, then there is a breach of international duty or obligation. So I repeat it one more time: the Outer Space Treaty, it is the Magna Carta. It is what laid down the main principle. Then all follows. Everything else needs to follow and needs to be in line with the space, with the principles that they are laying down under the OST, or Outer Space Treaty. So very, very important that the problem with the Outer Space Treaty, it is very, like I told you before, the first interview I had with you in the Destination show, the principles are so noble. The principles are, it's for the use of outer space for everyone. No state could have jurisdiction on it. It needs to consider the future generation and the present generation equitable use of outer space. It's very important among nations. But the problem is, like, there is a discrepancy between what we see as the principles and what we see later, because the issue found in the gaps and voids within the Outer Space Treaties, because there are voids, there are issue of definition. A lot of definition are not stated in the Outer Space Treaties, and when we do not have definition, we could interpret and bring about all kinds of assumptions, and that's what makes the issue difficult to find a common agreement between parties that they are active in outer space.
Understand. All right. Well, that's really, really interesting. So what, I've kept you over time, I think. I'm not sure, but what else did you want to say before you left, and to tell us, enlighten us, explain to us? What else did you want to say?
What else I wanted to say? Like I told you, a lot. Still, when we talk about environmental protection in space, because a lot of people think that sustainability is only about environment. And actually, sustainability, the sustainable concept itself is misunderstood in talk. And please, let's say I'm learning every day, and the sky is limit for knowledge. And I see a lot of people, they don't even know what is space law. And I've seen people is like even people I know here as what is space law, because it's not common. So it's very important to stress on the understanding the idea, and understanding the practice, and understanding what I'm talking about. And sustainable development, a lot of people, they think that it is about the goal. The sustainable development is a concept. It's something that it lays down the basis and the principles that it was later on withdrawn, all what is sustainability and goals and so on. And the concept was first put into the stream of international law in 1987, I think, in the report which is called the World Commission on Environment and Development. And it's called also the Brundtland Commission. So under the report, before we talked about sustainability, but this one put it in the stream officially of international law. And it was defined under the report, our common future report of this WCED. And it said it's the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is the idea of the concept. This is what laid down the concept. And if we go back to the definition of sustainability, space sustainability, you can see it reverberates. It echoes the echo of what I said now over there. And also, it's the process of change in which the exploitation of resources, the direction of investment, the orientation of technological development, and institutional change are all in harmony and enhance both current and future potential to meet human needs and aspirations. So can you imagine this concept, what if it is applied properly, what it can do to our present and future generation if institutions and governmental entities really balance the interests, because there are a lot of interests right there, and I talked about them earlier. If they balance these interests, how we can achieve the development as a human species, considering the environmental protection, considering sustainability in investments, because it's very, very important. And that's what I addressed also in my PhD research, that the economic aspect, it cannot be, it cannot provide the proper return on humanity. I'm rephrasing what I said, the idea, because it's not, I will not say it through law, but I address also the economic development from investment sustainability to have the return or the needed return from space economy on our social development. How can we have sustainability, or how can we achieve a sustainable investment into the space sector, the global space sector? It's very, very important, because relying on only governmental, governmental entities to invest into private actors activities, space activities, is not enough. We need to have sustainable investments coming from also venture capitalists, from banks or financial institutions, and so on. So it's very, very important, because the return on investment of space activities from space activity takes a long time, the return on investment. So how can we have how can we sustain a return that it can be not long term to the long run, as we've seen before with the NASA space programs, and we have let's say shorter term, that the space actor can have a return on investment which is not that long, and that return can be to the parallel sectors. They can be social return, which is very important, and we talked about it earlier, like before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my other question is, if we do start seeing this long run investment from these private actors and these financial institutions and these other actors going for economic and social return, you said that they would somewhat be guided by national law of their national countries, but in an internet connected world system, I mean, that can be kind of complicated. Is international law starting to anticipate this growth and this change that you hope to see and that I hope to see as for economic and social return?
Let's say this is really what I'm working on right now. I'm working on incorporating the sustainable development concept into the whole situation in order to have the needed return. And let's say I cannot tell you in briefly right now, because when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about space economy, it's very vague. Space economy, it includes all the sectors, all the activities that it is related to space. It's not the space activities that we see, the launch activities and so on, what I talked to you about earlier with the firms that they are active into the new space ventures. So when we talk about space economy is very, very big. It encompasses all the activities that they are related. So we have, for example, I give you a brief, idea. For example, the space application used in transportation, it's in aviation. The application that with the use of Earth observation and so on, they are included in the space economy.
Wow,
so it's very big.
Yeah, that's
so
huge.
when we talk about space economy, it's huge, and this is my challenge, and this is the stumbling blocks that I like challenge so much, and it's getting me sometimes frustrated, because addressing all these issues in one research it's very, 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 very challenging, because also not used to get multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary researches for PhD like venture. So it is very, 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 let's say, challenging. It's very fun. And this is what I do. So when we address, let's say, investment and economy and so on, we need to go by different categories of what sectors exactly we are talking. And I've been asked last day, what do you think, which best way to address space economy? And I say space economy, it's a very vague word, and we cannot have one solution for which economic formula we need to have for each space for space economy, because it's huge. We need to go by specific sectors or specific areas, and we need to address which one should fit under which economic model.
Wow. Yeah, and thank you so much for every moment of time that you give us. And you mentioned before that there's a knowledge gap. People say, what is even space law? What is this thing? And it's because it's emerging so fast, and it's so complicated at the moment, because it's such the barrier to entry has dropped to a long way. So there's a lot of new actors, whether they be state level or private or venture capital. Technological firms are all piling in. We've got the space elevator is coming up in the next few years. Space tourism is taking off. Miners want access. The space is a huge booming area, and I think that's why people are saying, what is this? And so every moment that you spend with me explaining the OST, the sustainability guidelines, and if we can help work out, because I want to see, as well as you do, the sustainability guidelines or the principles. I don't know which word it is. Principles. Implemented on a universal level. You can have all these different actors, but I think these principles are better. They're stronger, and they will lead to a better, stronger future for humans. And they leave less fuzziness. When we're talking about Mars, or we're talking about man-made objects or other celestial things, or when we get to the moon, what should we do? I think these principles are very decent, and I thank you very much for every moment of time that you spend
You're welcome.
Communicating these ideas, educating us, and working through it. And we look forward to one day when you complete your PhD, we'll be able to see more. But this is definitely it's exciting, and I know Adam's out there. He likes space, and kids out there are liking space, and it's going to be a less of a hurdle for the younger generation as well to really get into space and understand space, because it's going to be more a part of their life than it is my life or your life or our grandparents' life, because it's going to be more normal, just like computers have been more normal for them than it has been for us getting over that. So no, you're a pioneer, you're a scholar, and that it's fantastic, and I really want to thank you for your time, and I want to see these principles as well. I think these are great.
I would like to tell you something. They are very nice, the principles and everything. They are not following the trend right now, and they should be amended. What we are facing right now is very challenging these things, because what happened at the time of the time the space treaties were agreed upon, it's totally different ecosystem. It's not the same thing anymore. So they need to be, let's say, I'm not talking about the principle itself, but I'm talking about the whole package of the space treaties. They need to be reworked. States need to be working into applying the space sustainability guidelines and fill the gaps that they are very prominent right now to face the technological development, especially because the technology is the main space risk in our space endeavor and activity, and ethical use of exploration. The issue of unethical, maybe biological contamination, or contamination, it would be there. But what I fear for the future, which I'm addressing, and like that, the fear is crossed, is to get ethical codes of conduct, and especially in the use of technology and biotechnological development, in order not to escape Earth and go make unethical conduct over there, because over there's no surveillance for now, and we don't see what's going on, and China is already there, and we don't know what's going on in the pole where China is active.
Yeah. Do you think? What my final question would be? Do you think the United Nations is a good vehicle for this, or do you think that maybe the vehicle needs to change or be reworked, or how do you think the United Nations is a good vehicle?
Well, a lot of people, they always say talk about United Nations, that they are not, actually they are doing great job. They are trying to further ethical conduct and guidelines, and they have their subcommittees, and they address a lot of things. But United Nations, they are working on these issues, but how can we embrace these new conducts and so on if United Nations already have them, but they are soft laws, they are guidelines. It's not United Nations who's going to force the states to adopt these guidelines as international treaties. United Nations bring about the issue and fix the problem through guidelines and laws, but it's up to the states to, accept and embrace these things. So it's not the problem of the United Nations; it's the problem of the other stakeholders, that they did not, or they are not willing, because of the problem of this race going on right now, with the in the cradle of this geopolitical issues, that they are not keen to go and tie themselves with the international obligations and responsibilities and so on. So that's why they don't want to do it. It's not the problem of the United Nations.
Fantastic. Great answer. All right. Well, I look forward to our next conversation. I want to thank you very much for holding over an extra, I really enjoy every minute I talk to you. I always learn a lot. And I want to keep learning about this, and It's a very, very important topic, and it's only growing and becoming more complicated all the time. But what you've laid out here is a very, very good starting point on how these treaties and how these guidelines and how the sustainable development could really change our world for in a beneficial way. If these nation states chose to abide by the guidelines that's listed here, and there's some challenges to getting them to do that, but that's for another topic. That's for another day. But thank you so much, Malak. You've been fantastic as always. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me still. Thank you.
All right.
We
Thank
catch
you,
up
everyone.
again one more time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That's Malak. She's a space law PhD, and she's a wonderful person, and we really thank her very much.
Thank you.